Hot Rod just got an upgrade as a character and a collectible. Here's a look at the brand new Threezero Transformers MDLX Rodimus Prime. MDLX Rodimus Prime is approximately 7 inches tall with over 46 points of articulation and a die-cast zinc alloy and engineer-grade plastic internal frame system. Accessories include 1 laser blaster, 1 blaster rifle, and 8 sets of interchangeable hands. The laser blaster and rifle can combine to a photon eliminator rifle. The right Rodimus Prime handshake piece is designed to pair with the included Optimus Prime handshake piece for posing the two Autobot leaders together. Luckily for Transformer fans, Rodimus Prime doesn't represent the end of the road for what Threezero are going to be doing with their MDLX series. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the new leader of the Autobots, let me go and first thank the folks over at Threezero that did provide the sample we're about to have a look at. FYI, though, as it stands right now, Rodimus Prime is slated to release the third quarter of 2023 for a price point, again, at around $80, which I can't believe that they're selling these pieces for. For the height of the figure, depending on, of course, whether you want to count the spoiler that he has on the back of the body, if you did, then the figure is going to be about almost 8 inches in height, or I would say maybe about 19 centimeters tall. But if you're going back to the basics and just looking at the bottom self, Rodimus Prime on his own is 7 inches in height, or the figure is going to be 17 centimeters tall. And because I already have a few of these, let's bring in a couple now for comparisons. Here's what Rodimus Prime looks like with the former leader, Optimus Prime, of course. Height-wise, I would say Rodimus Prime is just a tad bit taller. I mean, again, if you were to, say, take the figures and put them, say, back to back, I guess on a head level, they're about the same. And it's only just because, again, like Rodimus Prime does have that very large spoiler in the back of his body that's probably giving him a little more height over Prime. Other figures for comparisons, here's what he also looks like with Megatron. I think that's the most recent we've looked at for the MDLX series. And of course, we can't forget about B. Here's what he also looks like with Bumblebee. As for the Autobots' accessories, I sort of got them sprinkled across here. We'll first look at the figure's hands. The hands I'm just choosing for right now, at least, be dynamic hands. These are good for, of course, putting the figure in some action poses. And the hands look pretty good. It looks almost like as if the fingers are a little on the more warped side, like this one and this one here, but you got a pair of relaxed hands. Those are always good to go. The figure also comes included with a thumbs up hand, and the figure has, speaking of end of the road, we happens to have said in, of course, the Galvatron when inside the body of Unicron. Of course, when he just opens up the matrix of leadership. This is the end of the road, Galvatron. And of course, this is the big pointing hand for that. That's going to be a good way of displaying the figure. He also has some gripping hands for, of course, the included weapons that he'll be wielding in a moment. As of right now, he's got some closed fists. That's not going to be doing much of anything. The figure also has, coming included with him, some very unique hands, which we'll talk more about in a moment. For right now, at least, I'll kind of put them off to the side. Just remind me that they're there. And he also has some other rather unique hands, too, that we'll talk about more in a moment, too. The other thing that the figure comes included with is 2 blasters, not though identical with one another. The figure has, first of all, a blaster rifle. The blaster rifle is quite very elaborately detailed. It's sculpted mostly here just in black plastic. Doesn't seem to have any additional paint whatsoever. But the front half of it can detach. Just simply remove the barrel from the rest of it. And I guess in that way you have, well, it doesn't really look like a salvageable gun that you could then have him wielding. It really does look like it's supposed to belong together. This little part right here, see this little clip of plastic, actually does slide then into the groove that's provided on the bottom carriage of the gun. And when you meet those two, not necessarily in the middle, you got yourself a rather interesting looking blaster rifle. The figure also, though, comes included with as well as a laser blaster, which again is a little bit more, something what I would more consider to be a gun that he would have, like if he was Rodimus Prime, for example, or even prior to that, even Hot Rod. This one doesn't attach at all. It's just, again, molded here in black plastic. What you can, though, do is you can take the two and you can merge them together. One sacrifice, unfortunately, has to be made is that you have to take the thing we already had a look at. You have to remove this piece first. And this doesn't seem to have a purpose with the instructions, nor on the images on the back of the box. This doesn't look like it serves any other purpose than just removing it and then just sort of putting it to the side. What you're then going to do is you're going to take the front laser blaster, and then you're going to take what's left behind the blaster rifle. And again, you'll take this little clip that's on the top, and you'll slide it in the same way. By the way, there is a hole there on the back, and then there's, of course, the little peg, little piece of plastic there in the front, and then just plugs into place. Once those are then merged together, I guess this is more something you would expect to see Rodimus Prime wielding. This is Photon Eliminator Rifle. I imagine he'd be doing a lot of eliminating with the size of this blaster. Really, really cool, though. I like the look of that. Again, like, there isn't, from what I can see, any other place where I can store this. I kind of looked around anywhere on the bot to see if there was a peg, a place, anywhere that he could slide this then onto. So I just didn't have to put it back in the plastic. Suppose, though, I am going to be putting back the additional hands anyways, so this will just have to be something that's going to go back into the tray also as well. The figure also, like I said, does come included with these hands. I reminded myself I did want to come back to these. These hands are actually ideally suited for then the Matrix of Leadership that doesn't come included necessarily with Rodimus Prime, but did in fact come included with the earlier looked at Prime, Optimus Prime. With these, you can actually take the hands, and with the hands the way they've configured them, see how they're sort of split in the middle? The top parts of the fingers actually then rest inside the Matrix of Leadership. And with that gap, the gap actually fits nicely around the frame of the Matrix. Now for this, I'm actually going to, let's just take Rodimus Prime's body here. One thing I did want to mention, actually, just before we get down to looking at all the things that are on the figure and swapping, of course, out the hands, is that this flap right here, the only reason why I'm drawing your attention to it is it falls out frequently. Because I am going to be moving the thing around on the figure, I'm going to be taking out his hands, I'm going to be moving out his arms. I just don't want this to fall off and land on the floor, and I'm not going to be able to find it as easy. So I'm just going to take it off for right now. What it should really do, though, is it fits into this hole. The other one fits fine. And it fits in, but I've noticed that you really have to push it in far enough. And it fits okay until the moment you start to move it. Now, again, I can only speak for the one that I have in front of me. I'm sure it's not going to be the case across the board that everyone's going to have a Rodimus Prime is going to have the same problem with the flap. Still, though, mine unfortunately just pops off a lot. So I might just end up taking a little bit of nail polish or just an extra dollop of glue and adding it to the end of it, just to probably thicken up the peg so it can fit properly in place. For right now, at least, I'm going to remove it just because, again, I'm going to be moving things around on Rodimus. I just don't want to have that fall off and land on the floor, and I don't even realize it until later. Let's just change the hands for right now. I will say, of all the improvements that they've made on Rodimus versus the original Prime, one of which being the pegs. These pegs on Prime, the original Optimus Prime, always were prone to moving around quite loosely. It made things really hard when it came to changing out the hands. Not the problem at all when I have here with Rodimus Prime. His pegs are nice and tight. So let's just plug those hands now in place. And with the joints then provided, you can kind of bring his shoulders out. And you can also then bend the elbow. The only thing you will want to be careful of, I'll talk more about this when we talk about the posability on the figure, is these little plastic flaps. These parts right here that stick further past the forearm, you will make sure that, well, you want to make sure that these hinge first of all, but when you're turning the arm, you don't want to accidentally clip these, because like this part rotates, but any bit of bend afterwards, you run the risk of actually bending or even snapping that plastic. So again, we're just going to bring these arms up. And we'll just sort of bend him in a place where it looks like it would fit the best for Rodimus here, of course. And we're just going to bring his arm up there, bring these a little bit more close together. And of course, then you can take yourself the Matrix of Leadership, and that will just plug into place. That's not the easiest thing to do, of course, when you've got a camera in front of you and you got like, I don't know, like half a foot space in front of you and the figure that you're trying to do this to. But still, though, you can take Rodimus Prime's fingers. I'll probably do this a little bit better of a job later on when we jump to final looks. But yeah, you can have the figure actually holding the Matrix of Leadership. Might even be, in fact, easier to put the figure down here for a second. Let's just move him a little more in frame so you guys can see a better job of it. Get the one hand snapped in there. Get the other hand snapped in there. You have to really kind of get it around his thumbs. There we go. And just making sure everything is good to go. Yeah, there you got Rodimus Prime wielding the Matrix of Leadership. Of course, the investment on your part is that you'd have to buy the Prime prior to this, because if not for that, you wouldn't have the Matrix of Leadership. I kind of, in a way, wish that the Matrix would have already been included with Rodimus Prime. But yeah, in fact, you can recreate the scene where he becomes Rodimus Prime. I still get chills in that scene. Arise, Rodimus Prime. Optimus! Anyways. Speaking of Optimus Prime, actually, let's just go ahead and remove the Matrix for right now. The one other hands, remember I did say there was another special set of hands. Just put the arms down here for Rodimus Prime. The figure also then comes included with these hands here. Now, specifically why I left these separately. You get a hand more for Rodimus Prime, clearly by the fact it's molded here in black plastic, and then you get a blue hand. This is actually for Optimus Prime. So the idea is that you're going to take, make sure, of course, the rules still apply. The thumb rule still applies for when it comes to robots. Just going to take the hand off and make sure the thumbsies go in. Going to plug this hand in place. And again, it doesn't really matter how you got him posed right now. We're going to fix that all in a moment. Let's bring Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime, you're going to want to change out this hand. And one of the problems I did say about Optimus Prime was like his pegs are always prone to give me problems. Like they move around way too frequently. So sometimes it was really hard to kind of get the hands in place for Prime, because even in that review, these pegs moved around way too much for me. Plugging that in as best as I can get it. Getting Prime sort of in a accepting pose. And then of course you can link the hands together. Actually, just to show you what it looks like, these hands link quite good together. Lining up the fingers to the palm and vice versa. Then on the other side, you can have then the two Autobot leaders. I think it was a comic panel, if memory serves me correctly, where you actually had Optimus Prime sort of passing the baton, passing the Autobot torch, so to speak, to Rodimus Prime. And I think there was a panel, in fact, that they had the two shaking hands. So they've nicely replicated that here, of course, in the release from Threezero. So I like that. Let's move Optimus Prime out of the way here. I guess just before we look and move Optimus Prime out of the way, I'm just going to bring down Rodimus Prime's arms. I want to show you guys the difference between the two. I feel like vast improvements have been made from what we got with essentially the first MDLX Optimus Prime to what we get here now with Rodimus Prime. All the features seem a little smoother, a little sharper, and the paint, I think, is handled so much nicer here on Rodimus Prime. In fact, actually, to look at the two, it almost looks as if they're from a different wave. The one thing I did want to bring in is I wanted to bring in Bumblebee, because I feel like of the figures that we've looked at from the MDLX Transformers, Bumblebee actually, from a color standpoint, the way they sort of have smoothed over, given a more pastel look to the finish, actually pairs, I think, a little nicer with Rodimus Prime than it does, say, with Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime had a lot of good features going for him, but he sort of had more of a metallic look to him, kind of more like a robot, with, in a way that I feel like Rodimus Prime kind of comes across more like an anime look, if that makes any sense. And he doesn't maybe have as much the panel lines as Bumblebee here, but I feel he fits a little bit better from the way they've colored the character, from the way they painted the figure. He looks a little bit more like Bumblebee. At least that's my opinion. So let's just move Optimus Prime out of the way. Of course, getting a closer look now at Rodimus Prime. For all intents and purposes, I mean, really, other than the fact that, of course, they had to throw in the handshake. If not for the handshake, I think this guy would also have been very passable hot rod. I mean, there really isn't a lot of change other than just really height. They age, of course, a little bit of his face when it comes to like the movie and the TV series. But it's obviously a hot rod and then becomes eventually Rodimus Prime. But I feel like to look at this, it looks very much more like a hot rod to me. He's got like a more youthful looking face, maybe not as more the aged, wise face that Rodimus Prime would have. One other little bit of assembly that I had to do also with the figure as well is that this really large spoiler came separate in the packaging. This, actually, we're just going to attach it right now because I don't want to show you guys where it actually goes. Here, though, on the back of his body, there's a slot, a little ravine, a little chasm. On the back of the spoiler, you'll see there's a little lip of plastic. It actually isn't so little at all. And that just plugs onto the back of the figure's body. Actually quite well. Not to the point where I'd really want to hold it by its spoiler, but just to, though, show you, it fits quite well on the back of the figure's body. It has some nice additional panel lines there also on the back. I really like the brighter orange and the yellow that they've also used there as well. Like the coloring that I would say for Rodimus Prime is, again, showing some of, if not some of the best Threezero stuff that we've gotten so far. I think is really all encapsulated into Rodimus Prime's design. I like the use of the oranges, for example. The red works really well. I mean, all these colors are really very familiar with Rodimus Prime and Hot Rod for that matter. The flame effect is really nicely printed there on the front, of course, being that this is an officially licensed Transformer piece. You do have the Autobot logo printed down below here. Now, Optimus Prime, I'm just going to put down Rodimus here for a second. Optimus Prime, of course, because he did have the Matrix of Leadership. This front section of Prime's body did open up, and it housed the Autobot Matrix of Leadership actually inside his body. Rodimus Prime doesn't seem to have that. There's no place that you can actually open it up. Not that you'd really need to have a place to really put the Matrix of Leadership. It's fine for actually staying with Prime. But like the coloring on this guy is so fantastically done here. The panel lining, as you can see, doesn't make as much the appearance as, say, maybe Bumblebee before, but you can see there's a lot of it really happening here in his abdomen area. He's got a few little flaps there that are going to be there serving more the purpose of allowing his legs to kind of move, so there are a few little functioning moving parts. The thing that kind of threw me off a little bit was he has these little vents there on the back of his figure's body, which you would just imagine to be there for more just design than anything else. But these actually have ball joints. The only reason I can think of why they're there is maybe it has something to do with the posability of the figure, because with this being able to rock back and forth, likely was the reason why they made this hingeable. And I guess because they wanted to have it so if you wanted to have it closer to his body, for example, Probably one of the reasons why they didn't leave the gap there on the side. But yeah, all in all, like, it's just a really good transformer. Like, the only thing it does, obviously it doesn't transform, which if that isn't a deal breaker for you at all, like, really venture into start picking up these MDLX figures. I'm a little bummed by the fact that the flap, this little back piece, doesn't properly peg in place. I could have easily just fixed this prior to hitting record, but I did want to show you guys one issue I did have with it. It's a very easy fixable solution. It's just probably a case where I may have to add just like a little bit of dollop of glue, or even like, you know, like a nail polish or something on the end of it, just to broaden up the point of the peg on the back of it so it would actually fit a little bit better. This flap actually fits fine. I'm not really sure why this one fell off as much as it did, but you got some really nice detailing on the back. You've got the little additional like piping there on the back, the figure's body, nicely handled here in silver. And again, I really like the coloring that they've chose for this guy. He isn't overly scratched up or battle damaged, which I think may have taken a little bit away from the figure. And really, I mean, other than a few little places on him, there isn't a lot of spots where he has a lot of that panel lining. So maybe if you didn't like that as much, for example, with Bumblebee, he doesn't have it at all, really, other than just like the abdomen area. And a few little areas there also in his forearms. They kind of have pulled back a lot when it comes to this panel lining. Now, for the figure's articulation, there is quite a lot to cover. Obviously, going back to his head sculpt here, it's going to be on a ball joint, so that alone allows the head to rotate all the way around. But in addition to that, Rodimus Prime also has a ball joint at the base of the neck, right there. I'll quickly show you guys what the head sculpt looks like once again. But the head does have two places in which it can actually bend. So there's one here at the ball joint, one at the base of the neck, so there's a fair range of motion to move. Arms do come out. Now, they can rotate all the way around, and the reason why I also say they come out, there's a ball joint you can see kind of inside the cavity of the shoulder. This allows this to also hinge up, so if you want to have it a little bit closer to his body, or you can also hinge it outward to have a little bit more space. Now for Megatron, I've brought mine out a little bit further just because I wanted to make him a little bit more bigger in the torso. This also really does help to give a little bit of additional posability, because again, like with this being able to hinge out, you can get almost I would say about a 45-degree angle bend. You probably could get just a little bit more out of that. One thing I also really like is that the shoulders have hinges, so these can actually hinge outward as well. So you can almost get 90 degrees, almost. Arms, again, move forward and back. There is the hinge at the elbow. The hinge in the elbow, by the way, just be very careful. This swivels back and forth, and I had it almost at one point where I swiveled it here, and then I tried to bend the elbow. And I guess that's probably as far to this turn that I would be able to get it. If I say turn it this way, and then I try to bend the elbow, like that's getting really close in quarters to this extra little piece that he has on his forearm. You can kind of see some additional detailing that they've put underneath the plate. So just be careful of this. Obviously, you don't want this to clip in the process. Hands rotate also all the way around. The figure's torso, for example, does swivel back and forth at the waist, first of all, but then it also hinges back and forth this way too. Now, one thing too is, while you can't really see what's under the hood, so to speak, if you bring like the torso back far enough, you can see some additional silver work that they've added in there as well. Didn't really even need to put that in there in the first place. Now, when it comes to the legs, we're just going to kind of bring the arms out just a little bit. These flaps do hinge out, and that will certainly be something you will want to keep in consideration, because when it comes to bringing out his legs, if these flaps are down, you're going to pop them off. Hopefully, it's just a case you can put them back in place. But if they snap, that'll be even a harder thing to pull off. Legs go forward, legs go back, and just again, while you're moving them back, you want to make sure that these are also brought back also as well. The figure has a mild swivel at the top of the thigh. Figure has a double hinge on the knee, and I want to show you guys here for a second. I want to bring the knee all the way back. That's as far back as the knee will afford it. I mean, that's quite a lot. A hinge joint's right there, and a hinge joint's right there. So he has quite a lot of bend going for his knee. Ankles move also back and forth this way. You can move it also back and forth this way. And he does have, sort of in the same way that Prime had, where like this cut of his boot kind of overhangs the rest of his feet, but not, I think, to the extreme that Optimus Prime had. I feel in a way like that's one thing I wish that if they could do, say, for example, a version 2 Optimus Prime, maybe just tool a few extra things on the original release. So I'm just going to bring him back in, for example. Like Prime had this also here on his feet as well. And it does leave a slightly unsightly looking little gap space there between his feet. And of course, the cap above that. But yeah, nice looking figure. I mean, really, to look at where they've raised the bar. And I really feel like they've raised the bar when it comes to these MDLX releases. We started sort of with Prime. Then we got, of course, Bumblebee. We got Megatron also as well. I just want to bring back in Bumblebee. I feel like Rodimus Prime is the best of the batch. He's the best of what we've gotten so far from MDLX. And I hope, again, like this isn't the end of the road at all. I think they have since then released announcements that they are going to be doing a Starscream. But, you know, for me, while I am loving the original Generation 1 looks, I've always been kind of more keen on, like, the designs post-animated movie. So I would love to see, I mean, we've already got, you know what, let's bring back in Megatron. Megatron is certainly one thing, more of a reminder to talk about something else, too. Post-movie, I would love to see, sort of taking what will be the advancement of one leader to another, the passing of the torch, so to speak. I would really love to see what they could do with, like, a Galvatron. A Galvatron, yes. Because, of course, like, while maybe Megatron and Optimus Prime are kind of more basic in that Generation 1 design, I really think they've elevated the design here with Rodimus Prime. And just to think what they could do further with future characters, like Cup, for example, or, like, just trying to think of other, like, post-movie. Maybe Ultra Magnus might be a little bit harder. But Springer, yeah, Springer and Galvatron would be certainly two I would love to see sort of approached in the same way that Threezero has approached Rodimus Prime. Not only is he, like, from a color standpoint, I think he's the richest looking character that we've gotten so far from the MDLX line, but he's certainly my favorite. By far, he's my favorite. I think Threezero has really done some new improvements when it comes to Rodimus Prime compared to maybe, say, the likes of the other ones that we've ever had a look at. And definitely, if you are collecting the MDLX up to this point, Rodimus Prime is a figure you don't want to pass on. I could have said mark it on your calendar, but most of the pre-order sites that have this guy listed show it only as third quarter 2023. So that may involve you marking off entire pages, about 3 pages worth on your calendar. That's just a bit of a waste. Just know, though, that Rodimus Prime, the MDLX release from Threezero, is slated to release and dropping any time now. Most of the sites do have the listings available at $79.99, which, again, for what you're getting with a figure that's got a metal frame and these guys plastic pieces over top of it, not to mention the passion and the paint that they put into him, I definitely think well worth the $79.99 asking price. This is now counting, of course, a couple of the variations that they did release. I think they also did do a Nemesis Prime. I never got my chance to get my hands on that one, but I think this is about the 4th or 5th figure that Threezero has done, with, I think, just recently announcing that they were going to be doing a Starscream at some point as well. But I think really, for me, think beyond the point of what the 86 movie. I would love to see them, what they could do with, like, as already mentioned, a Springer, a Galvatron, or even a Cyclonus. Think of that. The detail work to put in this piece. Now, granted, again, he doesn't transform, but I think by now, if you're going to be collecting any of these MDLX figures, you're going in it with already the know that the figure isn't going to transform, but what you're getting from it is more than making up for the fact he doesn't have moving parts, that doesn't turn, in fact, into a space Winnebago. I would much rather have a detailed Rodimus Prime instead. I have got him currently displayed with, again, the Autobot Matrix of Leadership, with full disclosure that the Autobot Matrix of Leadership did not come included with the figure. But if you already have Optimus Prime, and he's already sitting dead anyways, you might as well at least give the Autobot Matrix of Leadership to Rodimus Prime instead, so he can spend most of the episodes sort of just wallowing and wondering if he's ever going to live up to the standards that... That's all really Rodimus Prime ever really did in the series. Big thank you once again, though, to the folks over at Threezero that did provide the sample of the upcoming Transformers MDLX Articulated Figure Series Rodimus Prime. Lovely looking figure. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and certainly would like to stick around for more. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and you're also turning on the bell notification. Also, popping up at the very end of this video will be a playlist that will also cover the territory of all the other things I've looked at from Threezero. That will, in fact, include the other earlier looked at 3 MDLX figures, Megatron, Bumblebee, and Optimus Prime. Not particularly, maybe it was particularly in that order. Lots of videos coming your way, guys, so as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.